coming up on the program, we're going to make a lot of freezer slaw out of this ginormous cabbage that we got just for $3 at the farmer's market. Welcome to Canning What You Grow. I'm Holly Baird. Today we're making freezer slaw, as I explained here. Now, if you don't know how to make freezer slaw, I'll put the directions, the recipe in the show notes. But we just use the recipe out of the Ball Blue book. This is the most recent one, and it's on page 99 here. Might not be in yours. Just look up in the back. We're quadrupling the recipe. We bought this. We wanted to do that. Our cabbage didn't really grow very well for us this year, so I went to the farmer's market because I know I could find a good deal on cabbage there, or anything really, and I got this for $3, and it's about 10 pounds. So since we're quadrupling the recipe, it calls for 2 pounds of cabbage. After we take some of the peel off and get the core out, it'll be closer to the 8 pounds that we need for quadrupling the recipe. So I'm just going to get the outer leaves off, and as you can see, it's quite large. I'm going to compost those, and then the nice thing about freezer slaw is that you can, obviously you freeze it, but once you thaw it, you can do a lot of stuff with it. You can add like mayonnaise and milk, and then you can make it like a creamy slaw, or you can add some Asian things like teriyaki sauce or like a plum sauce, and then you can have like an Asian slaw. So there's different things you can do once you've got the base, and it already has the vinegar added to it, so it has that nice acidic kick. Oh, there's a slug there. There you go. And you know what? When I go to the farmer's market, here's what I do. Because there was another lady selling these size cabbages for $4. No, $5. It was $5. So I said, okay, thank you, and then I kept walking. And then you walk a little bit, and you'll find often that there'll be somebody else selling cheaper. And every time I go to the farmer's market, I always do that. If I could find somebody else selling it cheaper, I'm gonna go to that person. And then I bring my own bags too, because putting a 10-pound cabbage in a plastic bag probably isn't very good. So I'm gonna wash this off since I found that slug on there. I'll be right back. Okay, so now we're done peeling, and we're gonna cut this as much as possible, trying to find I think that's the flattest side. All right, now I'm going to, I think I'm going to cut down the middle here. I did sharpen my knife before I got started, and that's important because using sharp knives, most people might think, oh, that's not good, and you're going to most likely cut yourself. But actually, you're going to cut yourself more with a dull knife than a sharp knife. So let's see what we got here. Now I'm not looking to cut it too small, because I have this here. I have the food processor, which is going to do a lot of the work for me. If you don't have a food processor, you are going to have to shred it by hand, or you can use your cheese grater to shred it as well, but you definitely want to shred it. Let's see here. And let's see. Okay, so I have half of it cut up and ready to go in the food processor. We have a grating tool on there, so we feed it from the top and just kind of go along. I kind of preload it, and then we have the plunger to feed it through. Okay, so we've got some here shredded. So what we're going to do is take this off and get it into our bowl. Now, you're going to kind of layer this with salt. So I'm going to get this into the bowl, and I'm going to add some carrots and green peppers to it, and then I'm going to add the salt. So, actually. Okay, so now we're going to add, if you're just doing one batch of this, it's going to be 2 pounds of cabbage to 1 onion, about 3/4 cup of an onion, so 1 green pepper and 3 carrots. So I'm going to, since I'm kind of doing this in batches to layer the salt so that it all gets mixed in, I'm going to go ahead and get my onion chopped roughly here, because I'm going to put that in the food processor with the green pepper and some carrots as well. So that's what I'm working on right now. So here goes some onion. Just get it in there. Okay, so now we got some carrots and green pepper in there with the onion. And then we're going to go ahead and get it kind of layered in. I peeled the carrots. And if these were your carrots, maybe you grew them in the yard and they're pretty new, you might not have to peel them. But these looks like they've been sitting around for a little while. So we're going to peel them just to make sure we have that added extra freshness and know that they're good to go for the freezer slaw. So I'm going to get to peeling more, and then I'll show you the next step here. Okay, so as I had said, we're quadrupling the recipe, so we have about half of that. We have a double recipe here. I'm going to add the salt since this gets kind of layered. It's 1 teaspoon per batch. So I'm adding the 2 teaspoons now since we're at about the halfway point here. And then we're going to just finish up more of the cabbage, onions, and peppers and carrots, getting those shredded. So what you do simply is you just put the salt on and you just want to mix it in. And the salt just helps soften everything and draws the water out of the vegetables. And you let it sit for an hour. So we're going to get this rest of this done, and then while you're letting it sit for the hour, you can look at the rest of your recipe, get anything set aside that you might need. Okay, so we are getting going here with our brine for the freezer slaw, and I just added the water, so that's part of it. And like I said, we're quadrupling this, so that was 2 cups of water. It's a half cup for one recipe. I'm going to get my burner on high here because we want to become a boil. And then what we're going to add is we're going to add our vinegar. So let's see, it calls for 1 cup of vinegar, so we do that times 4. I like to do, you can do white vinegar, you can do apple cider vinegar, whatever you want to do. We actually made our own vinegar. Now if you're doing canning, I wouldn't recommend using this vinegar for canning because we don't know the level of acidity. But since I made this, I can use it for the freezer stuff. And it's got a really strong, it smells like apple cider vinegar. We made it from pear scraps. But, so I'm just going to add 1 cup of this just to give it a little bit of punch. And since it's fermented, it adds some beneficial things, beneficial nutrients and things too. I keep it in the fridge because anything that's home fermented, if you leave it on the counter, even if it's done fermenting, it'll still keep fermenting. So that's why I keep it in the fridge. So now we have to add just 3 more cups of vinegar. So there's 2 more. And then a 3rd. So that's all the liquid we're adding to this, and it's gonna start to get a little warm here, which is okay. Then we're adding the sugar. This is a pretty sweet recipe because for each batch it's 2 cups of sugar, 8 cups total. What we did, we didn't rely, because I don't know if you know this, but when it comes to measuring cups, there's a difference between liquid and dry. We dry measured it just to input it in here, just so it's easier to pour into the liquid. So make sure you measure that separate. And then all goes in. Whew, quite a bit. We have the sugar. It's getting mixed in. As you can see, it's quite a heavy syrup here. Then we're going to add our mustard seed. Now the recipe calls for mustard and celery seed. I don't care for celery seeds, so I just double the mustard seed. And so it's going to be 2 teaspoons per batch. So that's 8 teaspoons, which converts to 2 tablespoons and 2 teaspoons. And again, like I said, I'll put the recipe for 1 batch in the show notes for you. And then you can do whatever you want. But this just adds some flavor. And you have to let this cool, this mixture cool. So while you're letting the cabbage and vegetable mixture sit, you can always go ahead and get this done and then let it cool down. So I'm just going to stir it while it gets to a boil here, because I don't want any of that sugar to burn on the bottom. And all you're doing is just bring it to a boil. It doesn't have to be roaring boil or rolling boil. It can just be a regular boil. Turn it off, set it aside, and let it cool down a little bit, and then we'll finish up the slaw process. Okay, now we're just about done here. And as you can see, I don't know if you can see this, but you'll see it when you do it. There's a lot of water. You can see it more here. There's a lot of water there, and that's okay. The salt helped draw the water out. It adds to the liquid of the slaw, and then it helps soften the vegetables. So you want to have that water. That's why you let it sit. So our brine is cooled. It's not ice cold, but it's cool enough where you can put it on here. And you just want to put it all over. There we go. That's good. And then you just stir it. And it's, as you can see, you stir it up. You don't have to do a lot of stirring, just get it kind of brought up from the bottom through the top. So I'm just going to stir it up as much as I can here. Okay. And then you want to get your ladle so that you can fill your jars. Jars don't have to be hot or cold or anything like that, because you're going to let this go to, just make sure it's room temperature before you set it in your freezer. And I think that's pretty well mixed. Maybe just a few more. You're going to leave about a half-inch headspace. You can leave more if you're concerned about the jars breaking in the freezer. You can also put this in plastic. I'm not a fan of plastic, so I'm not going to put any plastic. I have a jar here that we have a red mark on the bottom because on the top here there's some dents. So it wouldn't be good for canning, but it's okay for freezing. The reason why it's not good for canning because it won't create a seal with those dents. So, but for freezing, it's fine. And I use freezer lids. You can use regular two-piece lids, but I've invested in these, so I just use them. I just keep reusing them for different things. So let's get some in the jar here. Try to do kind of oh, I might have to get a knife. Got a little jammed up. There we go. Okay. So keep that in mind. You might get jammed up with your cabbage mixture here. So do a combination of wet and dry. So you get some brine and then you get some vegetables as well, and you can kind of tap it down as needed. And I'm just going to add just a teeny bit more, and then that'll be enough. I don't want to like I said, I don't want to overfill. You don't want to overfill because this is going to expand when you freeze it. So there you go. It's got probably closer to an inch, but that's plenty. And then there you go. So then you get your lids. It's probably about room temperature now when I combined it with the slaw. So you just get your lid on. Don't tighten it too much, just finger tighten it, and then you can go ahead, finish your jars, and put them in the freezer. Okay, so we ended up with 8 quart jars, so that's good. We're going to make another batch before winter, and then we'll have a good amount of freezer slaw. When you do thaw it out, you can drain it. You can leave it as it is, or you can drain it and add different things to it. Like I said, mayonnaise to make it a creamier coleslaw, or you can do like some different Asian flavors. We have a little bit left here. We're going to let this sit before we have dinner, and then we'll drain it off and eat this with our supper. So there you have it, freezer slaw. Thanks for watching Canning What You Grow. I'm Holly Baird, and yeah. For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.